Alright everyone, welcome back to another video. Uh, I didn't record a video yesterday, sorry about that. Some stuff came up with a pet, so a little preoccupied for most of the day, but we're not back. Last time I left off with America, French or British, talking about the domination for North America by the French and the British, and what wars would come from that, and things of that nature. And got to show off this very, very beautiful full art here on this 2 pages. But now, we're on to the emergence of American nationality. Just making sure there's not 2 pages here. Okay, there we go. And here, I'll set you guys up here. There you go. How did the people of the 13 colonies come to think of themselves as Americans rather than as transplanted Englishmen? One cause was sheer distance. The Atlantic was a far more formidable barrier in the days of sailing ships than in the times of the 19th century steamer or the 20th century airplane. Um, yep. Although traffic was incessant, the trip took weeks. This had twofold results. It forced the colonists back on their own resources, and it caused the British government always to be late in dealing with colonial affairs. During the Revolution, by the time local officials could get in touch with the home government and the government could send out instructions, the situation might have changed, might have so changed as to make those instructions completely out of date. Another cause was that the American population, though mainly English, contained immigrants from other countries. As Thomas Paine put it, America was the child of Europe, not England only. A French immigrant, Saint Jean de Crevecoeur, in the letter from an American uh, farmer, asked and answered the question, whence come these people? They are a mixture of English, Scottish, Irish, French, Dutch, German, and Swedes. Here, individuals of all nations are melted into a new race of men, whose labors and posterity will one day cause great changes in the world. But probably the most important cause of all was neither physical distance nor ethnic variety, um, but conditions of frontier life. This lifestyle forced on the Americans a greater simplicity of social and economic life than prevailed in Europe. There was little oh wait, there was little abject poverty, but no great fortunes, and practically no leisure class. For the Southern planters were kept busy managing their estates and looking after their slaves, and the Northern aristocracy, so far as there was any, consisted of busy merchants and lawyers. The great bulk of the population were farmers who had to do almost everything for themselves. An intelligent German traveler, Johann Schoeffes, Schoeffe, Schoff, Schoff, in his Travels in the Confederation, 1783 to 84, mentions a quotation from an American of the time. I am a weaver, shoemaker, farrier, wheelwright, farmer, gardener, and, when it can't be helped, a soldier. I bake my bread, brew my beer, kill my pigs, I grind my axe and knives, I build those stalls and that shed there. I am a barber, leech, and doctor. Schoeffe pointed out that the man was everything at no expense for a license. and could do anything, as indeed his countrymen in America generally can. This versatility was necessary in a pioneer environment, and it obviously had many advantages. But there was some drawbacks too. In the early days of the Republic, it led to the belief that anybody can teach school and anybody can fill a public office. It also fostered the idea that successful generals were by that fact good material for presidents, which might or might not be the case. One reason for the absence of extreme poverty was a possibility of gaining land on easy terms. Some laborers came over as indentured servants, paying for their journey by promising to work a certain number of years. But once free of their indentures, they did not sink into a landless proletariat or even become tenant farmers. As a rule, they moved west to new ground and set up for themselves. Since the entire East was wooded, nearly all private homes were built of wood, but recent research has shown that the log cabin was originally devised by Swedish immigrants. The English settlers in both Virginia and New England made frame houses. Eventually, however, the log cabin became common in the frontier settlements as the cheapest and most easily constructed type of dwelling. In the older settlements near the Atlantic coast, some public buildings were of brick and stone, and some of the wealthier plantation homes in the South had fine linen, glass, and chinaware, silverware imported from England, and family portraits. But the stateliest American homes did not rival the European mansions of the wealthy. Yeah, you gotta remember, like a lot of the Americas is set up for, like they said, ease of the frontier life. Now, the frontier life, you're not always gonna have the amenities that you would in Europe. A lot of these European cities have been around for a long time, hundreds of years. Some of them maybe even thousands. And so you're gonna have problems of, well, how do I get all of these amenities? Well, you're gonna have to do it yourself. You're gonna have to be like that farmer said. You're gonna have to be basically everything. You're a shoemaker. You're a gardener. You're a farmer. Um, you're a doctor. You're a soldier. You have to break your own bread. All these things. So a lot of that life does not lead. It's not necessarily the easiest life to lead, but it allows an American to feel very different from a European who doesn't have those things, who doesn't have to do all that. They can have a shoemaker, they can have a cobbler do the things that they need to do for the shoes. They can go to a baker. They can go to this and that and that. But you won't have that on the frontier life. And so it forces these people to become their own best worker, kind of. And so it really will change the perception. And like they said, it does lead to people thinking anyone can do anything, but that's not true. Some people are better at certain things. Um, Now, anyone, if they put their mind to it, can do anything, sure. But you are maybe more inclined to do certain things just because of your personality, things like that. So it makes sense. And not, yeah, like they said too, not all good generals are good presidents. Sure, there are good generals that have been good presidents. It's very common, but it doesn't always mean that's the case. You could have good generals, but bad presidents. Sometimes they think of it too much like a military, where they aren't good statesmen. That's the thing. They're good generals, not good statesmen. But luckily, we've had some good generals and some good statesmen. Luckily enough for us, at least. All right. Well, now we will look at the pictures, of course. And above, so that guy here, is the French-born essayist Hector Saint Jean Crevecoeur. Crevecoeur? Any French speakers? Tell me how that's pronounced, please. Declared that there is room for everybody in America, a land he referred to as the Smiling Country. At the above right, a French engraving praising Thomas Paine for being Secretary of Congress in the Department of Foreign Affairs during the War of America. Author of Common Sense and the Replies to Burke. Deputy to the National Convention of the Department of Pas-de-Calais, the first year of the Republic. And Thomas Paine, very important guy. What Common Sense, I believe, is still technically the most sold book in the United States. I believe something like that. It's something very, very unique. But yeah, very influential individual, um, as can probably be gathered. At the below left here, so this right here, Americans of the time were busy people, if one can believe this illustration from Benjamin Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanac. Yeah, they're showing Americans very, very busy. Got everyone working to keep going. And yeah, if you look, it's very deliberate what they're showing. They're showing a mother, a father, or that's a father, one of the two, but then the children. All working, all working. At least that's what it looks like to me. Maybe someone else has a different interpretation. At the opposite top here, one of the earliest industries in the colonies was the manufacture of beaver hats, and this shows the final ironing process. Yeah, you can see beaver hats right there. Yeah, beaver hats are very, very popular. The French selling hides, that's really what their colonies ended up becoming. That's just all they were. They were just for beavers. The British as well, a lot of what they settle in Canada, they kind of don't care about as much anymore because there's not as many beavers because they kill a lot of the beavers. Um, but yeah, beaver hats, very, very common. Hat making in general, very dangerous job. Have you ever heard of the Mad Hatter's disease, or like the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland? A lot of that comes from the mercury that is used in hat making, at least at this time. So, interesting enough. And then below here is a summer scene on a small, prosperous farm near Batavia, New York. You can see nice little prosperous farm. It's got a little orchard there. Got his garden of, I would assume, vegetables, fruits, things like that. And then he has his bigger farm over here of wheat. He's got the animal pens. He's got the horse carrying what looks to be hay on a cart. Very little prosperous farm. Very nice little painting here, or engraving, I should say. But that's going to do it for this video. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you have any ways you can improve these videos, leave a comment down below. I always appreciate your feedback. And as always, subscribe. It really does help out the channel. Thank you.